So thanks for watching my lesson. This one is kind of a two-in-one. It's basically going to cover some ways that you can use a loop pedal to practice some of the stuff which otherwise might be quite boring. Building up layers, having a fun time whilst learning essentially. And also, I guess essentially it's a tutorial on the song I was playing, which was from the soundtrack of the film Any Given Sunday. It's the music that plays behind a speech Al Pacino does. He's the manager of or the coach of an American football team, and it's a real inspirational speech. Quite famous speech, even though the film's not necessarily that well known. The speech is quite well known, I believe. If you YouTube Al Pacino Inch's speech or Any Given Sunday speech, you'll be able to find it. I think the piece is actually called Peace, P-E-A-C-E. I can't remember the composer, but I'll put it in the description. So I'll go over that first, because that's our kind of canvas, and then discuss the things you can build over and loop over it to kind of build up this wall of sound, which by the end gets a bit muddy as mine did, but it's still good fun to get to that point. So essentially we just got 4 chords, which is a B minor, an A, a D, and a G. So the original that I based it on just plays 3 notes for each chord, this little arpeggio. So that's the A, D and the G strings of the B minor, playing them in that order. And then the same for the A. And then they play the D up here, this A shape, so we've got 5, 7, 7. And then for the G, we've got the bar chord, but they're skipping the A string, so we've got the 3rd fret on the E, 5th fret on the D, and then the 4th fret on the G. And they do a bit of vibrato for that one, so. I just add an additional note to each of those chords, so mine goes like this. And also you'll notice I'm playing the D as like a C shape, so take a C, slide it up. So let's lay down that track first. And then we'll put the original one over it so we can get that little vibrato. And then the next thing I did was add a bass line. So I'm just taking the root note for each chord, real simple, just playing that for each chord. And then you can mess around and go over it again, but this time try the 3rd of the chord or the 5th, just to practice what the different chord tones sound like, which is also quite useful. So. Do it again. This time add a 3rd for the D. So that's something else to mess around with, making your own little bass line. Then start finding different chord voicings for those chords. Actually, before you do that, this has a little riff, so we're going to add that riff now, which is this. So that's all I started. That's the bits that I've kind of ripped off from the song, is the 4 chords and that riff. And that riff goes, so 2 on the A string, 2 again, 4, 5, 4 on the A string, open, 2 more open, and then 3 on the second fret of the A string. So let me play that, sorry. And then 1 open to finish. So get those 2 down, and then we'll start adding the layers. So we've already added the bass. Now we're going to find different chord voicings. So the first thing I did was I took the chord voicings on the D, G and B strings. So these are inversions because the first note I strike isn't always the root note. So we've got this shape of 9, 7, 7 for our B minor, which is essentially that bar chord, but we're just playing those 3 strings. And then we're going to play an A-shaped bar chord, but again just those 3. Then we're going to play a D here, again just those 3. So this is an inversion because our first note is an A instead of a D. And then we're going to play this C-shaped G, but just these 3 strings, again an inversion because our first note is the B. So that's the next layer, is to start messing around with different chord voicings using different sets of strings. So let's see what that goes like. And now let's find some more chord voicings. This time I want to use my 3 higher strings because I want to get different frequencies in there. So I'm going to take a B minor up here, which is a D minor shape all the way up here on the 11, 12, 10th fret. I'm then going to play an A, which is the shape of a D, on a 9, 10, 9. I'm then going to play 11, 10, 10, which is the top part of this D bar chord. And then I'm going to take that D shape down 2 frets to play the G. So 7, 8, 7. But I'm going to arpeggiate them now instead of strum them. And that's quite a full sound at the moment. If I wanted to, I could start improvising. So I could start practicing my B minor pentatonic, practice my B natural minor, whatever scale you fancy. But we're going to add a few more layers just to show you some other stuff you could practice. The first of which is going to be a unison bend. So unison bend is where you pick 2 strings like a double stop and you bend one of them up to hit the same pitch as the other string you're holding. So in this case we're going to be putting our first finger on the 7th fret of the B string, our ring finger on the 9th fret of the G string, and we're going to pick them and bend up with our ring finger the G string so that it hits this note, which is the same as this note, which is an F sharp. So the key with a unison bend is to make sure you're picking 2 notes that are in the scale you're using, and also to make sure you're in pitch with the bend. So let's see what that sounds like. So that wasn't perfectly in pitch, but I'm not going to do it again because I've spent ages on this video. I've got to stop saying as well. There was one of my videos, I don't know why, I think it's because I looked at it on my phone, but it came up with subtitles and it kept coming up with so yeah, got to try and stop. So the last layer we're going to add is going to be octaves. Octaves are where you play two strings and they're both the same note but an octave apart. Essentially there's two shapes you can use for those. So if you're going on the E string, then if your first note's on the E string, then your second note is going to be 2 frets up on the D string. So for example, that's an F sharp and that's an F sharp. That same relationship of 2 frets apart exists if you're on the A and the G string. Once you get to the D and the B string, or the G and the E string, it's 3 frets apart. So that's an E, that's an E, that's an A, that's an A. For this little thing that I'm doing now, it's going to be using the A and the G string. And essentially I'm going to follow that riff we did and then carry on up through the scale. Until I get right back to the beginning but a whole octave up again. So B, 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 B. So those shapes are 2, 4, 4, 6, 7, 9, 9, sorry, 2, 4, 4, 6, 5, 7, 7, 9, 9, 11, 12, 14, finish with 14, 16. So let's see what that... So yeah, at this point it's definitely getting a bit too cluttered in the mix, but for completion's sake I'll show you what I was doing for the lead bit. So this is the point where you just start messing around, you just improvise all day long, no more layers unless you really want to, but this is what I did essentially. So. So that's taking the riff and playing it in different octaves, up and down the neck, and bridging the gap between them by using the scale notes to get to that next position. So started off in B minor pentatonic in position 1, worked my way up to B minor, well, it's more B natural minor, position 4. Yeah, so ultimately the best thing a loop can do is help you practice improvise your lead, and that's where we ended up. So we did our technical stuff in between and then we just jammed effectively. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Ultimately though, I think the best thing you can do on a loop is just to play a blues shuffle and jam until your heart's content, hours and hours on end. So let's finish the video by doing that. And my lights just died, so probably a good time. Anyway, let's try and do it anyway.